That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Those Who Wish Me Dead, the third directorial effort from Taylor Sheridan, who's probably still best revered as a screenwriter, which Warner Brothers is releasing May 14th, 2021.
Okay, I feel like I need to start with the description of the film, like on IMDb. It says, a teenage murder witness finds himself pursued by twin assassins in the Montana wilderness with a survival expert tasked with protecting him and a forest fire threatening to consume them all.
That sounds like the log line for the film, because now that after seeing it, the assassins aren't twins.
Well, and I remember reading it before we watched it, thinking...
A pair of assassins.
Yeah, thinking that this just sounds ridiculous. And unfortunately, the movie is as ridiculous as this sounds. So before we get into the director, should I just explain the story?
Sure.
Okay. Where to begin? There's a lot. Okay. Angelina Jolie plays a character named... Hannah, who is a smoke jumper. So we see her and her little ragtag group of cohorts, like kind of at like they're at some sort of function, just being loud and obnoxious.
I think there's new recruits.
Yeah, it's like an orientation for new recruits. But she has some demons, because we find out that she witnessed, there was like a fire and she made a bad call with like which way the wind blows, and a couple of kids who were out in the forest were killed. So this haunts her, which rightfully so. Okay, now then we flash to Fort Lauderdale, and we see that there's this beautiful mansion, and a couple of guys go in.
Named Jack and Patrick, played by Aidan, Gillen, and Nicholas Hoult.
Who we find out are assassins, but they're pretending to be like gas company employees. They trick their way into the house, and they end up causing the house to explode, which killed a district attorney. Okay. Then they make their way to Jacksonville, Florida, and there we find a forensic accountant.
Played by Jake Weber.
And he works with the district attorney who was just killed. So he realizes that happened, and he says, we have to get out of here, to his little 10-year-old son.
Connor, played by Finn Little.
So he and Connor hop in their Volkswagen Jetta station wagon, which I thought was funny because he lives in like this gorgeous modern house, driving like a mid-sized station wagon. But anyway, they hop in this car. Well, maybe because he's an accountant and he's frugal, but whatever. Cars are bad investments. Anyway, they make their way to somewhere.
Butte.
Which is where Angelina Jolie sits in her treehouse looking at the forest.
But he's going to meet his brother-in-law, played by Joe Bernthal.
Who's a sheriff, and that sheriff used to date Angelina Jolie's character, so that's how they're all tied together. So he makes his way there to escape these people who he knows are after him. And they do catch his ass, and they kill him. But they don't kill the little boy. So the little boy, Connor, is out in these woods trying to find safety, because the dad... I had to write this down because I thought this line was so stupid. The dad tells him, go to the creeks, because the creeks lead to rivers, and the rivers lead to towns. Yep. So this little boy... it's also important to know that the dad, the accountant, gives his son some information. Because we find out that the reason everyone's being killed is because the accountant found some like financial records that he shared with the district attorney, which apparently is gonna cause big trouble. We never find out what that trouble is, even at the end. But whatever that information is, he gives it to his son and tells his son, you need to find someone you can, after you go to the creeks and the rivers, and when you get to a town and you find someone you can trust, you get them to get you in front of a camera so you can get on the news and read off this stuff I told you. All right. So this little boy's in the woods. Angelina's in the woods. She finds him. He shares his story with her, so she's like, well, we need to get you to the town. But in her little tree house, it was hit by watchtower. It was hit by lightning, so her CB radio doesn't work, and she's like 12 miles away from the nearest town, and doesn't appear to have a car, which we'll get into because this story is so out of control for me. So they have to walk, but the bad guys, the assassins, have set a huge fire. So it diverts they're trying to smoke the boy out because they know they need to kill him. So Angelina makes her way back to her treehouse, and during this time, the assassins have found the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. Well, first they try to apprehend his wife, Allison, played by Medina Senghore.
Whose character's pregnant.
And is probably the best part of the movie.
She's by far the best part of the movie. But they apprehend the sheriff and for some reason want him to help them find the boy. So while they're doing that, Angelina and Connor are in the treehouse. They make their way to the treehouse, and then everything sort of culminates with that because then they escape. Like, they're able to... Angelina's able to escape the treehouse with Connor, and now the two guys are in pursuit.
Allison kills the older assassin, Patrick, played by Aidan Gillen, and Angelina has the showdown with Nicholas Hoult.
And they kill him. Well, they incapacitate him, and then the raging fire burns him to death. So Angelina and Connor escape, and we see daybreak. They make it back to the treehouse, and we see that the sheriff and his pregnant wife are in the treehouse. And they're there, but the sheriff has died from like injuries, so just the wife is there. Paramedics come, the news come, and then we see that Connor's about to go tell what he knows. The end.
And you forgot a very big cameo.
Tyler Perry. Okay, this is probably this is the worst part of the story because we never find out who is responsible for this killing. Like, who is going to suffer from this information that could leak? So obviously you would think it's like some like organized crime boss, right? Who the district attorney is investigating and who potentially is going to go on trial or something. But then Tyler Perry shows up to talk to the two assassins.
To have a very conspicuous meeting on the side of the road somewhere.
Yeah, and a very vague conversation about how we only deal in absolutes and you need to tie all loose ends, so like you know what you need to do. That's also when we find out that the assassins feel like they needed two teams, and but because they're trying to save money or cut corners, they only have the two of them, and that's why this mishap occurred. Like if they would have had two teams, they could have killed both at the same time. So it's like, well, if this is that important and this person has all these resources, but whatever. And then Tyler Perry takes his big ass back to the car, and we see that it's a federal vehicle.
Yeah.
So that really jacked me up because now I'm like, so the government is behind? Like, what is happening right now? But first, can you talk about the director?
Taylor Sheridan. Well, we just watched Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, which he also wrote the screenplay for.
So who directed this?
Taylor Sheridan.
And Taylor Sheridan wrote Without Remorse.
As I mentioned at the beginning of this, he's probably still best known as a screenwriter.
What else has he written?
Sicario, Sicario 2 Day, The Soldado, Hell or High Water, which I think is his best, and Wind River, which he also directed in 2017.
And what else has he directed?
Vile, Wind River, and this film.
Oh, okay.
But I do think that he has a certain signature, pretty good at some violent action scenes, if they're also in films with some decent character work. But I think that it almost takes another person to kind of step in as director to interpret that. Because, Hell or High Water, I think, is David Mackenzie directed that, but I think that was an excellent film.
Okay, what doesn't work for me? Because what did I like? Nothing. So, what is the movie?
No, that's not, Medina Senghore she has a good scene when they try to attack her.
Yes, that's true. She's the only good part of this movie.
Yes.
Okay. The movie with John Cena where they're...
Playing with Fire.
Okay, Playing with Fire is about smoke jumpers.
Yes.
That's like a cheesy family comedy. That movie did a better job of explaining like the job of... Because I feel like we need to understand that more than we need to know that Angelina like has all this remorse and guilt and can't do her job because she's guilty about a fire.
But that's what's piss poor about it is her only backstory characterization is this guilt over these children dying in a fire when she misinterpreted how the wind was blowing. What about and hinting instead that she was this wild child from the past that there's no substance to her character.
Not at all. And then to demonstrate she's kind of wild, like they're being rowdy at this orientation. Then this dum-dum, who looks like she weighs like 90 pounds,
yeah,
jumps on the back of a pickup truck and tells the driver, drive as fast as you can. she's wearing a parachute and then pulls the string. So it like shoots her back and she falls into a ditch. Knowing damn well if that actual lady would have fell like that, she'd be in 100 pieces. Okay. I'm confused why she lives in a treehouse. Like she says that that's where like
She doesn't live there. I
no,
think
but right.
they have to spend some time. That's her shift or whatever.
They spend long shifts in this treehouse, but it has no bathroom, she says. And I'm so confused. Like, so she's expected to stay up there for, I'm assuming, like, what, 12 hours, 24 hours? It can't be short shifts, right? And she says the nearest town is like 12 miles away. And in an emergency where she needs to get Connor out of there, it appeared that there was no vehicle available to her. So is it like one of the crew people, one of her team members must drive each other to this treehouse whenever they have to do their shift. But I just thought like, I really needed I would have preferred we get more insight in like why the treehouse situation is precarious. That would have made more sense to me than showing her being like an old rowdy bitch back in the day and like her having all this remorse about some boys dying in a fire.
Well, the mistake it makes is not building any characterization for anybody. And we spent so much time with these two killers who, you know, the plot mechanics have determined that whatever they're doing is going to be completely ambiguous. Why spend any time with them at all and instead give us a characterization for her instead of just some kind of rip-off of Backdraft? But I could see that I think they're trying to do like this a revisionist Western kind of thing about this, protagonist in the wilderness, like an old John Wayne character, ostensibly, or Gary Cooper, that's this isolated person that's very lonely and a broken soul and is here to save this child.
Angelina is so miscast.
Yes.
That woman looks like she has an otherworldly aesthetic, right? Like it makes sense for her to play Maleficent, but her aesthetic does not match this character. Like the texture of her skin, she's clearly had injectables. Her eyebrows are perfect. Her teeth are perfect. It just doesn't make sense that this person spends a day, 24 hours at a time in a treehouse with no bathroom and looks like that.
Yes, I agree.
There's even a scene where she has to run after Connor, which just watching her run look like that's not something she's accustomed to.
This woman needed to be rugged, I think maybe an alcoholic trying to escape kind of her feelings in some way. There's a really odd scene with Joe Bernthal, who, to be fair, Joe Bernthal I thought had the best scene in Wind River, is talking to his very pregnant wife, and they have this very awkward conversation where they're making it known to us that he used to date Hannah, but it's like, why?
Who cares?
If you're gonna do that, do something with it. Make that have had some kind of tension. But I think a better film that is about two gangsters that are hired to transport a child that they're gonna kill is the movie Cohen and Tate from 1988 with Roy Scheider and Adam Baldwin, directed by Eric Red. To me, that had all the pomp and circumstance I wanted in that kind of a scenario. To me, this feels like it's trying this Western thing, but it's really a very watered down John Grisham film about conspiracies and people finding out information that they shouldn't.
Also, I didn't care for the look of this film. There are some beautiful shots of the forest and all that. But then there are also a lot of the scenes with Angelina have very interesting lighting, and there are some scenes where it appears that she's outside, but it doesn't, like the lighting looks like it's an indoor shot or maybe green screen, to the level of like Tommy Wiseau on the rooftop in the room.
I don't know that it's quite that bad.
There's the one scene where she's kneeling with Connor when he kicks her and they're like close up. That it looked like green screen.
That could be, which a funny point that you bring that up though. The Nicholas Ray film Johnny Guitar, a Western starring Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge, Joan wouldn't allow any outside shot, any exterior shots of her in that movie. So maybe that was the thing with Angelina. But the cinematographer was Ben Richardson, who shot Beast of the Southern Wild and Mare of Easttown, which is on HBO with Kate Winslet right now.
I cannot recommend this film. There's nothing fun about it. It was just like, it's kind of laughable. Like, who cast her? I mean, I guess if you can get Angelina Jolie to do your movie, it's like, of course, but
I think somebody else was supposed to direct this and Sheridan somehow got her on board.
I'm predicting this will get at least one Razzie nomination.
It's based on a book by Michael Koryta, who also serves as a screenwriter that I think Sheridan retooled with Charles Leavitt, who's written a lot
Leave it or love it.
Leave it or love it. Who's written a lot of terrible screenplays, including Warcraft and Seventh Son. I didn't like K-Pax or In the Heart of the Sea or Blood Diamond. But the dialogue, I think, is pretty bad.
Yeah. Oh, and one last thing I really didn't like is the one assassin, the older one.
Mm-hmm. Aidan Gillen from Game of Thrones.
I'm sure he's a fine actor, but the dialogue and him trying to be like, oh my God, looking like Dustin Hoffman, like I just couldn't.
They were trying to have that older killer versus younger one, kind of like in, as I said, Conan.
Yeah, but Nicholas Hoult, that's his name, the young guy.
Yeah.
I thought he did a better job of seeming creepy.
Sure.
Because he's younger and like he seems more boyish, but then he's the one who's kind of really like twisted, I think.
Sure.
So that he worked better, but yeah, that other guy, there's just so much I didn't like about it. If I wouldn't watch this if it were free.
His accent also crept in a few times because he's Irish.
Yes. What would you give this movie?
1.5 out of 5.
I would give it 1 out of 5. Thank you.
Bye.